John Farquhar Fulton was an American neurophysiologist and science writer. He received numerous degrees from Oxford University and Harvard University. He taught at Magdalen College School of Medicine at Oxford and later became the youngest Sterling Professor of Physiology at Yale University. His main contributions were in primate neurophysiology and history of science, personal life and education. John Farquhar Fulton was born in St. Paul, Minnesota as the youngest of 6 children to Edith Stanley Wheaton and John Farquhar Fulton, an ophthalmologist who helped found the University of Minnesota. He studied at the University of Minnesota from 1917–18 and then transferred to Harvard University, receiving a B.S. in 1921. Starting in 1921, he studied neurophysiology at Magdalen College at Oxford as a Rhodes Scholar, earning a B.A. with first-class honors in 1923. Then, as a Christopher Welch Scholar at Magdalen College, he received an M.A. and a D.Phil. In 1925, he then received an M.D. from Harvard in 1927. After his time at Harvard, he focused his studies on neurosurgery at the Peter Bent Brigham Hospital in Boston under Harvey Cushing. He later returned to Oxford to receive a D.Sc. in 1941 and D.Lit. in 1957. He was hospitalized for diabetes mellitus in 1950 and for cardiac difficulties in 1957. He died at the age of 60 due to heart failure. Leadership. Fulton taught as a demonstrator in physiology for 2 years at Oxford University starting in 1923. He taught briefly at the Magdalen College School of Medicine from 1928–29, then transferred to Yale University, becoming the youngest Sterling Professor of Physiology. His leadership extended outside the classroom. His positions included editor for the Journal of Neurophysiology, creator of the Yale Aeromedical Research Unit in 1940, chairman of the Subcommittee on Historical Records of the National Research Council, member of the Committee on Aviation Medicine, trustee for the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton University in 1942, president of the History of Science Society from 1947 to 1950, first chairman of the Yale Department of History and Medicine in 1951, along with Harvey Williams Cushing and Arnold Klebs, and head of the Journal of the History of Medicine and Allied Sciences from 1951 to 60. Contributions. History of science. Fulton strongly encouraged the addition of humanities into the scientific fields by placing the history of sciences into general education. His passion for this topic landed him the role of president of the History of Science Society from 1947 to 50. He aided in the founding of institutions, such as the Medical Historical Library at Yale, the Logan Clendening Lectures in the History of Medicine at the University of Kansas in 1950, the Yale Department of History of Medicine, and the Yale Department of the History of Science and Medicine in 1959. During his time as president of the History of Science Society, he was a member of the editorial board of its historical journal Isis and helped stabilize it so it could grow in popularity. He also organized meetings in 1947 for the Committee on the History of Science and General Education, which created a project to collect materials to use in the teaching of history of science. He argued for the English translation of historical texts that traced the history of the sciences. He had a hobby as an avid book collector, and he donated much of his collection to the Yale Medical Historical Library. He also added his own work to these collections. He wrote biographies for Harvey Cushing, Benjamin Silliman, Robert Boyle, Girolamo Fracastoro, Richard Lowett, John Mayo, Ken Elm Digby, and Joseph Priestley. Fulton also discovered early publications of Ambroise Paré, a surgeon who lived in the 16th century. Primate physiology. Fulton created the first primate research laboratory in the United States. Through the 1930s, he and other scientists did comparative studies on functional localization in the cerebral cortex. They found that lesioning the prefrontal cortex created calming effects in the monkeys. Fulton proposed, but did not implement, the idea of using this technique on humans to relieve mental diseases. Fulton's team's findings influenced Portuguese neurologist Gas Montes, who developed the medical practice of the frontal lobotomy in humans and who won the Nobel Prize for his work in 1949. Fulton's work in the field of neurophysiology brought about the creation of the Journal of Neurophysiology in 1938. World War II. The impact of Fulton's studies in neurophysiology extended to the military during World War II. Fulton created the Yale Aeromedical Research Unit, which lasted from 1940 to 1951. It made great progress in the fields of aviation medicine as well as high-altitude flying, which caused Fulton to be awarded various honors, awards and honors. Honorary Officer of the Order of the British Empire, Civil Division, Officer of the French Legion of Honor, Commander of the Order of Leopold of Belgium. 1955 John Fulton Medal from the Society for the History of Medical Science. 1958 George Sartin Medal from the History of Science Society for outstanding contributions in the history of science. Publications. Books Fulton, J.F. Muscular Contraction and the Reflex Control of Movement. Williams and Amp. Wilkins, Baltimore. Fulton, J.F. Selected Readings in the History of Physiology. Charles E. Thomas, Baltimore. Fulton, J.F. Physiology of the Nervous System. Oxford University Press, London. Fulton, J.F. and Amp. Thomson, E. H. Benjamin Silliman, 1779–1864, Pathfinder in American Science. Schumann, New York. Fulton, J.F. Harvey Cushing, A Biography. Charles Thomas, Springfield. Fulton, J.F. Functional Localization in the Frontal Lobes and Cerebellum. Clarendon Press, Oxford. Fulton, J.F. Frontal Lobotomy and Affective Behavior. A Neurological Analysis. W. W. Norton, New York. Fulton, J.F. Decompression Sickness, Kesson Sickness, Divers and Flyers, Bends and Related Syndromes. Saunders, Philadelphia. Articles Fulton, J.F. Robert Boyle and His Influence on Thought in the 17th Century. ISIS, 1932, 18–77–102. Fulton, J.F. A Bibliography of the Honourable Robert Boyle. Proceedings of the Oxford Bibliographical Society, 1932, 3–1–172. Fulton, J.F. and Amp. Gennard, M. A Study of Flaccid and Spastic Paralysis Produced by Lesions of the Cerebral Cortex in Primates. Procas Resnerve Mentdist, 1932, 13–158–210. Fulton, J.F. The Centenary of the Sheffield Scientific School. ISIS, 1947, 38–100–101. Fulton, J.F. The History of Science at Cornell University. ISIS, 1947, 38–99. Fulton, J.F. Physiological Basis Frontal Lobotomy, Acta Medica Scandinavica, Supple. 1947, 196–617–625. Fulton, J.F. The Surgical Approach to Mental Disorder, McGill Medical Journal, 1948, 17–133–145. Other Fulton, J.F. Muscular Contraction and the Reflex Control of Movement. Doctorate thesis. Baltimore, Williams and Amp. Wilkins. Fulton, J. F. The Needs of Historians of Science. p. 1. Conant Conference on Science in General Education. BSH 86. Richard Harrison Shryack Papers. American Philosophical Society.